Hope is this force that allows you to visualize what you want to see.
Faith drives me. Faith is the reason why I'm still here.
We came here with 2 bags, nothing.
Notre Dame has become not only a campus for me, it's become a home.
From the campus of Our Lady's University, this is For Good, Stories from Notre Dame, a behind-the-scenes glimpse into life under the Golden Dome and the powerful stories that drive Notre Dame to become a force for good in the world. Hello and welcome to For Good, Stories from Notre Dame. Today we have the incredible privilege of sharing a powerful story of courage, perseverance, and faith. Our guests are Maria Fernanda Zamora, a graduate from Notre Dame's class of 2025, and Juan Sebastián Chamorro, a visiting fellow at the Kellogg Institute for International Studies. While their paths have only crossed here at Notre Dame, their lives are more deeply intertwined through their shared experiences of opposition and exile from their homeland, Nicaragua. Now they continue to raise their voices for justice, democracy, and human rights. Maria and Juan, it is a distinct honor and pleasure and joy to be in your presence. I have to say, it was just a few weeks ago. I was flying back from San Francisco. I had my Notre Dame magazine with me. Michelle Cuneo, a terrific colleague, had written this article about the two of you, and I was so inspired that I said, I have to meet you, and I want to be able to share your story more broadly with our audience. So maybe we could begin with you, Maria, and you've just graduated from Notre Dame, but tell us a little bit about your story. It was at a young age of 14 that you decided that you needed to go out into the streets and protest against the injustices of the regime in power, and it took its own life and got you deeper and deeper involved. Tell us a little bit about that opposition and where it came from and how you sustained it.
It started mid-2018. Social security reforms in Nicaragua, and protests started going into the streets. My family got involved. I got involved. I was only 14 at the time. I have never seen my country so united as this time. Everyone in the streets, everyone fighting for one same cause. And things became violent very quickly. That made me grow up very fast at the moment. I didn't understand the extent of it at first until later on.
So it seemed like the right thing to do, but being at such a young age, you really didn't know what the consequences were going to be for you and your family. There was one particular protest that you talked about where you were next to a young man. Can you tell us about the impact of that?
Yes, I was in a protest. I was about 15 at this time. Everyone would protest. They have their face covered. No one would be able to know each other's real identities or names. And I was talking with this young man. He was a sophomore at the university in Nicaragua. And they had this moment, shooters started shooting randomly.
From like the tops of buildings?
From the tops of buildings. Mm-hmm. And they shot him in the leg. And we had been talking for the past 2 hours or something in the protest. Mm-hmm. And of course, I didn't know his real name. I didn't know how his face looked like, but I thought he was my friend at this point. I thought we had this big thing that we were both fighting for, and I started feeling like family after those 2 hours. But he was shot, and everyone ran, and I ran with everyone else to this point.
And then you made the decision to one day, without your parents' blessing or consent, to write an article for La Prensa. Tell us about that process, about what you wrote and what transpired next.
So people had started stopping protesting in the streets. At this point, I was more involved. I knew I had that one incident. I had more moments in my life where I thought I was already too deep into the political situation in the country. So, but everyone was quiet. COVID was happening. So I decided my only avenue I had left was to write. I submitted my article, just an opinion piece, talking about the youth perspective and everything going on in the country. I never thought it was going to be published. I just wrote to share my feelings, just let it out for myself. A few days later, it was published in the national newspaper with using my name and my face.
And your father is a daily reader, or was, of the La Prensa, right? And he discovered it by just seeing the article.
Seeing the article.
Yeah. So then, what were the consequences for you after that? You also decided to teach. Tell us a little bit about that.
So right before writing, I started teaching in a local public school. My English was not perfect at the time, but I had the vision of helping out other younger kids in my community. And I gathered some other students from my classroom, from my school with me, and we started teaching English. At that point, my idea was just share my knowledge. But after some classes, I realized it was something bigger. We were not only banned from speaking on the streets, from carrying our national flag, we were also banned from educating people, from teaching them critical thinking. And I realized this once our club became bigger. We started teaching. We started with 20, 30 kids. At this point, we were teaching to 300, 400 students. And this is where the Ministry of Education became involved. And they gave me a very strict protocol of what they wanted me to teach.
So they called you into the office?
They called me into the office and they asked me, you can teach them how to memorize the colors, how to memorize numbers. You cannot teach them how to reason, how to think critically. They didn't say it exactly that way, but they gave me a special teaching book.
And what were the kind of things from that book that you were supposed to repeat to the students?
Whether Daniel Ortega is the best president, whether different constructed history, it's not exactly what happened, but what the dictatorship wanted students to believe. It was very obvious at the time that it was indoctrination, even though I didn't know what it was, because I was just 15 at the time.
So
I didn't really
respond?
Understand. I took the book. I said I would follow it. It just didn't feel right for me. I didn't really share with my other friends who were also teaching this information, and we just continued teaching this way.
Got it. So Daniel Ortega and his wife are the leaders of the Sandinista dictatorship that has only gotten more brutal over time. And Juan, you have this kind of dual commitment to free press, La Prensa, which has been, the leader in a free press for many generations now, through right-wing dictatorships and left-wing dictatorships and democracy in between. But then also, in addition to that, you made a very difficult decision to run for president yourself. Tell us about your feelings about the free press and the courage that it takes to maintain a free press under a dictatorship, and then also your willingness to run for politics yourself.
Absolutely, Lou. Thanks a lot for the invitation. It's a real pleasure to be here. First of all, a little bit of a context here. Maria mentioned that everything started when Ortega tried to reform Social Security, and that affected the elderly. So college students went to support the elderly. So what I'm saying here is that the entire nation, from the elderly, college students, young kids, middle-aged people, people from different walks of life, housewives, workers, small farmers, everybody went to the streets against the reform to Social Security, but in a larger sense, to protest against a dictatorship that has been installed and is getting more brutal. More than 350 people assassinated during those marches. Thousands of people injured, losing their limbs, their eyes. The case that Maria mentioned, by the thousands of political prisoners, including myself, and hundreds of thousands of people have left the country, mostly to Costa Rica, Spain, and the United States. So we're talking about a major crisis here. Right. It's a small country, but still in proportional terms, it's a huge crisis, humanitarian crisis, political crisis, social crisis. Now, in terms of the press, the newspaper, La Prensa, where Maria wrote, was founded by my grandfather 99 years ago. It has been like a very strong institution. I've not been personally involved in the newspaper. I was more in the public sector. But in the family runs these stories of struggle against the dictatorship at the time. Unfortunately, Nicaragua has been under a dictatorship most of its independent life, unfortunately. Since the 1930s.
From the Somoza regime on the right.
The first dictatorship of the right, the first dictatorship of Ortega on the left, and the second dictatorship. But never in the history of the 99 years of the newspaper had occurred what is happening right now, that the armed forces get into the building of the newspaper and steal the machinery, the presses, the computers. They took everything. They put my cousins into prison. The general editor of La Prensa was in prison with me for almost 2 years. My other cousin, the son of Violeta Chamorro, also in prison. My other cousin, Cristiana, under house arrest. So it's a direct attack to the free press, to a family that has been struggling for generations for the defense of freedom, democracy, and justice for all Nicaraguans. So when I got involved in all this, first through a fund that we established supporting the injured and the deaf, unfortunately. So we were able to attend hundreds of people. Some of them died in the emergency room, unfortunately, but we were able to put the emergency fund because they were denied to have medical attention in public hospitals. Like Álvaro Conrado, he was shot in the chest. He was carried to the closest hospital, public hospital, because he was participating in the protest. He was denied medical attention, but not only once, twice. He died on the third, to his way to the third hospital. That's the brutality of this dictatorship that we're talking about. So we couldn't stay silent. We couldn't stay at the margin of what was happening. So the entire country went into the streets, and unfortunately, Ortega showed the worst of him, fired live ammunition and killing people by firing bullets to the head.
So the ultimate consequences, I mean, if you're going to stand up and against the injustice of the regime, you could easily lose your life, or you could lose the lives of family members in this process. Amidst that backdrop, where do you summon the courage to run for the presidency and to oppose Ortega?
Well, I was, before that, I had been part of a negotiation table with Ortega himself twice, and tried to solve the situation. We were summoned by the bishops of Nicaragua, trying to find a solution to this catastrophe. But the regime was showing more and more signs of not doing anything. So at the opposition, we had this dilemma. Okay, what do we do? Ortega controls the electoral system, controls everything, the judiciary system. And we knew that the chances of an electoral fraud were almost 100%, almost 100%, because we were planning on the possibility that maybe on election day, with a single candidate facing Ortega, people will go to the streets or will go to the polls and vote to Ortega, and we were going to make it more difficult for him. So it was a political strategy to instead of being on the defensive side and staying at home, we say we're gonna go to the streets, or we're gonna try to go to the streets. We were not at the end of the day, but we were trying to run a campaign. And when we say we're talking about the opposition. There were other candidates. We were running a primary process with debates, TV debates on the internet, things like that. So Ortega didn't like that expression of the democratic exercise among the opposition. So he did what we never imagined that he was going to do, and that was to put the five of us, the pre-candidates of the presidency, in prison the same week of June. In my case, I was kidnapped from my house June 8, 2021.
So you're kidnapped, you're with your wife and your family. Tell us about the 20 months in prison. What did you know? What did you not know? Tell us about that experience and the dynamics for your family.
My daughter has been accepted to Notre Dame School of Architecture. This is end of
Probably
March.
Yeah.
So we were really happy.
Right.
We were planning to come with her and to start school. But then the campaign got a little bit tougher. The repression got tougher and I got kidnapped. So I was taken to this high security prison, isolated from the world. Obviously, I didn't have a right for a phone call or to talk to a lawyer or anything like that for 90 days.
So 90 days you're in complete isolation.
And they didn't know, my wife and my daughter didn't know where I was. So technically, according to international standards, I was under forced disappearance. Mm-hmm. But the most dramatic thing is that you don't know what happened to your family. Right. They beat me and took me into a police car that night. And the only thing that I was able to see was my wife surrounded by 40 officers. That was the last vision that I had of her. I didn't know what happened to her for 90 days. I didn't know if she had finally gone to Notre Dame or how she was, my daughter, and how Vicky, my wife, was doing until 3 months after so many pressure. International pressure by Vicky and other family members, I was able to see my sister. And then my sister told me that my daughter, Isa, had been accepted to Notre Dame, which gave me a lot of happiness, of course. And that my wife had to walk through the woods, cross River San Juan, the border with Costa Rica. My daughter is an American citizen, so she was able to fly through the airport. But my wife was being accused of treason to the homeland, the same crime that I supposedly committed. Yeah. So she was she had to walk through the river and go to Costa Rica and fly to the United States and meet again with Isa and started a campaign, an international campaign for the liberation of the political prisoners. Completely transformation of Vicky from quiet businesswoman running a family business for 25 years, confiscated now, a restaurant, family restaurant, not involved in politics at all, and then became a champion for human rights and the defense of freedom throughout the world. She had to travel to Europe, to the European Parliament, Brussels, Spain, Rome, Washington, D.C., New York, Los Angeles, everywhere that there was
just
a possibility to denounce the abuses of this regime. She will go there out of love for the family. And at the end, she played a fundamental role in the liberation, not only of my liberation, but the liberation of 222 political prisoners. And that's the book that we are writing about in our memoirs.
Well, we're going to talk a little bit more about that book, but tell me a little bit about your 20 months in prison. How do you stay hopeful? How do you, I'm sure there had to be some incredibly dark and lonely and difficult moments, if not days on end. How do you sustain your spirit? How do you have no idea that when and how. Tell us about how you sustain yourself and then ultimately how you were released.
In my family, there's been a tradition of being political prisoners. My uncle, who was eventually assassinated, had been in prison for 6 years in different times. And my grandfather's father was also a political prisoner. So being political prisoner is something that I was kind of, I would say, I wouldn't say prepared to, but at least something that it was known in the family.
It was not out of the realm of possibilities.
Yes, and I knew the risks of getting into prison. I never expected to be that long. I knew I was challenging a brutal dictatorship, that I was challenging his power. So I knew that was a possibility. I even recorded a video just in case I got captured, and eventually the video was aired after I was captured, saying that, if you're seeing this, I'm being captured, but continue with the fight. It's important. This is a good cause and all that. So what I'm saying here, Lou, is that I was I thought I was prepared. But it's a completely different story when you hear the sounding of that iron door close for the first time. You realize that your life is dependent on completely different circumstances. Your life is dependent on others. So regardless of the preparation that you might have, it's going to be always a terrible situation, even if you are, or even it's even worse when you are innocent.
So most of us can't even imagine. I mean, for me, it's hard to sit through a boring, long meeting on campus. To think about the doors being shut and then you have an indefinite period of isolation. You have no idea. We can't even imagine it. So tell us.
The space is about 3 meters by 3 meters. So I spent 2 years in that space. So what do you do there? Yeah. Now, there are what they call the Mandela rules, for international rules for prisoners in general. Though all of those conditions were denied in our cases. We were denied reading material, writing material, of course, the Bible. We request the Bible several times. And we were not allowed to speak because obviously we were political prisoners. We were politicians. There were people there. We were trying to do political work with the guards and things like that. Yeah. So we learned sign language, for example. We became very good at it. But the conditions were really, really brutal, especially because you are isolated from the world. You got a small space. Now, going back to your question, how do you survive under these conditions? I think it was a combination of 3 things. One is the power of prayer. Mm-hmm. That's fundamental. Mm-hmm. Prayer allows you to connect and to ask God for something with the deepest sentiment, with this feeling that you're really praying for something that you really want, which is freedom, obviously. Mm-hmm. And when you get freedom, you realize that those prayers had a meaning. Mm-hmm. The second is physical exercise. I did exercise all day. Mm-hmm. Started from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. Walking almost 10 kilometers every day in a very confined space. Mm-hmm. So because we were not allowed to do anything, not even communicate with other cellmates or to write or read. So exercise was the second element. And the third is hope. Mm-hmm. Hope is this force that allows you to visualize what you want to see. And I was always in my prayers visualizing this moment when I was going to be walking out of the prison with the sun and the breeze in my face and walking as a free man. Mm-hmm. It didn't happen the same way I imagined. I was put on a plane, and we can talk about that later. But the importance of visualizing what you want with the hope that it will happen is extremely important. And just to a final element on prayer, when I was able to talk to my family and knowing that Isa, my daughter, was here at Notre Dame, we had this ritual. Every Sunday, 4 p.m., Isa will walk to the grotto, light a candle, pray to the Virgin Mary, and I will do the same in a very at the corner of my cell at the same moment, trying to make the connection. So how do you survive into these terrible conditions? Those are the 3 elements which can be applied to overall everyday life problem, to find the strength, the physical strength to keep moving, and the spiritual strength through prayer.
Very powerful. I mean, really powerful. Tell us a little bit more about prayer. There were certain prayers that you said every day. Can you give us some insight into that ritual?
We have a routine. In prison, you have to have a routine, because otherwise you start thinking about bad things. You start thinking about, what is happening to grandmother? What is happening to my relatives and things? So you need a routine. So we pray the rosary at 10 a.m.
You and the other prisoners in their cells?
In the cells.
Okay.
The second rosary at 4 p.m. And that was a worldwide chain of prayers of that particular rosary. And then at the end of the night, we will pray a specific prayer it's called the St. Ignatius prayer. That it says, Lord, take and receive all my liberty, my memory, my understanding, my entire will. All that I have, I call my own. You have given it all to me, and I give it back to you. And it's a sense of, God gives you so many things. Mm-hmm. Some of them are material. Mm-hmm. You in prison, and when you have this life-threatening situation, you don't care about material things. Yeah. You start thinking about what's your purpose of your life.
Right.
The beauty of an embrace of a loved one that you cannot see. that you cannot touch.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to see and speak to my daughter for 18 months until I was allowed for one phone call, 10-minute phone call after 18 months. So all these beautiful elements of life, living with the family, enjoying music, seeing the clouds, couldn't see the clouds, seeing trees.
Yeah.
I spent almost 2 years without seeing trees.
Any of that. Yeah.
So when you face these things, and then I see people worry about that they have lost a document, and they spend the entire day stressed about a problem that has a solution.
Yeah.
Prison gives you a little bit of
Perspective.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Let's talk about how each one of you were forced to flee the country. So maybe we'll, start with Maria. What did the consequences of your actions mean, not just for you, but your family? And when did you know, and how did you know that you needed to leave the country?
Well, at this point, leaving wasn't necessarily a decision. It was necessary. Our names were no longer safe after I started writing in La Prensa, after my work in the school started to get more known about. So we started receiving some more indirect threats. And we have seen the history, how it happened to other people around us doing similar situations, how they ended up being imprisoned, how they ended up getting their businesses burned down, their houses burned down. So we took the bold decision of leaving. Thankfully, we were able to leave through the airport. And at this time, I had already been accepted to Notre Dame as well. So my family and I left around April or around May of 2021.
Of your senior year.
Of my senior year.
Yeah.
And at this point, we started our life and the Exile.
So how did you know about Notre Dame from Managua? How did this even come into the picture to apply here?
I had come to a summer program here. I had already been interested in politics and world politics. And I came to a summer program here my junior year of college, of high school. And I felt called to be here. I felt like this was home. And ever since I came that one time, I always knew I wanted to come back.
Was there anything that deeply impacted you to say, I want to go to Notre Dame?
The community I felt, even though I was just for 2 weeks here during the summer.
Yeah.
It was so far away from home, yet it felt like I was still at home in a different way.
Right.
From the relationships I built with my professors, even just from being 2 weeks here, from the admissions officers, how I felt really wanted by the school. And 4 years later, now graduating from here, it's the best decision I could have ever taken.
Well, that's fantastic. And then Juan, how about for you? How did you ultimately, how did you get out of prison and make your way here?
I was asleep February 8th, 2023. We have just had dinner with my cellmates. And we have been the year before, been sentenced to 13 years in prison. 13. So my wife, my daughter, who were here at Notre Dame the day of the sentencing. This is the day of my birthday, by the way, February 23rd, 2022. A very devastating moment. They thought they were not going to see me until 2038. So, but a year after, in February, there had been some negotiations with the American government. We obviously did not know anything about it. Right. But then a police officer came with civil clothes and say, put this on. And that never happened.
And this is while you're asleep at night.
So they woke me, they woke up us, there were three of us in the cell, and this police officer came and gave us civil clothes. And that had never happened. We were never told before to change our clothes for security, I guess, reason, to change our clothes within the cell. So that was a sign. We didn't want to get excited because this is a brutal and cruel regime. They always play with your feelings. We were hearing rumors that we were going to be moved to another prison. Then they moved us to another cell in a larger group, 25 of us. And obviously that never happened before. And then we were placed on buses, 3 buses, and we left the a prison. I cannot tell what time of the night was that because we only could know the time of the day during daylight, but not at night. But I guess it was around midnight. So we started to travel throughout the city. We were discarding possibilities until we turned to the highway that goes to two destinations. One is the main penitentiary of the country, and next to it is the airport. And again, we were never told where we were heading. So you can imagine the level of stress that you had at that moment. So and unfortunately, the prison and the airport are next to each other. So there was no way knowing exactly where we were heading. And it was until that the first bus turned into the Air Force that I realized, okay, I'm flying somewhere. Then a couple of hours later, we went into the tarmac and we were asked to sign a very informal paper saying that we agreed to leave to the United States. And it was until that moment that I learned that I was being taken out of my country, expelled, deported from my country. The other option would be stay in prison. So it was no brainer. I mean, I
and you were stripped of your citizenship as well?
While we were flying. But before that, there were people from the State Department waiting for us. This is a plane that they chartered for precisely this specific group of 222 political prisoners. Okay. So I got out of the bus. I kneeled in front of the plane. Did a little prayer and got into the plane as soon as fast because I didn't want these guys to change their mind, right? And then we took off at 6 a.m. That day of February 9th, 2023, and we landed in Dulles International Airport, Washington, D.C. at almost noon. While we were flying, the dictators called for a special session of the National Assembly, reformed the Constitution, declared us traitors again, and stripped of us of our nationality. So we landed in D.C. as a stateless person, which brings a whole bunch of complications. And then they confiscated all our assets, homes, bank accounts, Social Security contribution for those older, the pension funds, farms, all these properties.
Stripped you of everything.
Strip of everything, trying to infringe this sentiment, this pain in a moment that we were facing the light of freedom for the first time. My daughter was here, Notre Dame, and she obviously got the news from the very beginning that the same day, very early in the morning, she got a call from the American ambassador, my wife. So my wife was in Houston at that time. Isa was in Notre Dame. They both flew to DC, and we met at the end of the afternoon that same day. You can imagine, after so much months of separation,
the relief, the joy.
I was so happy. That was definitely the happiest moment in my life. Obviously, I was privileged in the sense that, the reasons why I was so separated from my family is because they had to leave the country. But the majority of the political prisoners had their families back home. So I suffered during the prison time because of this family separation. But when I came, to the States, I was one of the few who was able to actually reunite with the family, while the rest had still family separation. So a very grateful moment. And going back to Notre Dame, I was really happy to be here, not only because my daughter was studying here. My father studied here in the 50s. So it's a school that has been related to the family. My uncle was also a student here in engineering school. But then my dissertation advisor called me and said, I suppose that you're looking for a job now that you're free, and there's the Kellogg Institute for International Study. I know your daughter is...
We're sitting right here in the Kellogg Institute offices.
And I said, it's not because your daughter is there, it's because the Kellogg Institute actually worked on the things that you have been working.
Right.
So I applied for the fellowship, and here I am. Interestingly and coincidentally, I've been here at the Kellogg Institute almost 20 months.
Yeah.
The same amount of time that I was in prison. So so things happen for a reason, you know.
Yeah.
And
this is the
really
Nicaraguan flag that is hanging behind us in the background. And so just a couple questions more for each of you. And what has Notre Dame meant to you? Has it been a place of refuge as you've had to flee your country, your people, your customs, your culture? Has it prepared you for this next step in your life? And if so, in what ways? And begin with you, Maria.
As I was saying before, Notre Dame has become not only a campus for me, it's become a home. It's been a place that has given me the tools for me to grow, for me to rebuild, for me to understand what my next step is. I think professors here have done much more than teaching. They've been able to listen, people that I've been able to rely upon. They've also allowed me to think deeper in subjects of justice, of what it means to rebuild the country, allow me to understand that protest is not sufficient to get Nicaragua out of the situation, but rather taught me how to be an advocate for justice, taught me how to put everything I learned back in Nicaragua, whether there's a protest, but now put it into practice.
Mm-hmm. And I know your faith has been very important to you. How has the integration of your faith been behind all of this?
My faith is the reason why I'm still here. It's the reason why I did everything I did. I think there's a reason why we were placed in that situation, why we're here today, as Mr. Juan Sebastián was saying. And faith drives me. Faith is what gave me the strength to do all I did and know that it was right.
Mm-hmm. How about for you, Juan? What has Notre Dame, the 2 years being back here, meant to you?
Well, when I say that I've been spending almost the same amount at Notre Dame as in prison, is because God gives you, this path that you are very mysterious. I was asking myself, why I'm here in this prison? What is the future? And, you have to ask those questions, but also have the faith to know that things are going to get better. And for us as a family, definitely better. Even before I was liberated, Notre Dame became a very special community of support for Isa, my daughter, and my wife. And when I was in prison, Father Pete McCormick told Vicky, my wife, said, Notre Dame can teach many things, but the example of what you're doing with the love for your husband and the advocacy work that you're doing to freedom, to justice, is probably the best lesson that that your daughter can have. So with that message, it gave Vicky a lot of hope, but also this very characteristic sense of Notre Dame that it has this humility of recognizing that people are very important in the formation of the people. Now, when I got out, I found, and again, putting the context, this is a situation that we have been separated for almost 2 years.
Right.
Our house was confiscated, taking away everything from us. So we came here with 2 bags, nothing. And
which is the same for you, right, Maria?
Yes,
Same
exactly.
situation.
And that's the life of exile people, And so we were received here with so much generosity, solidarity, and time to reflect, time to write, writing a memoir, and time to thank God as a family together and go back to the grotto as a family and pray for all those moments that we were separated and praying for the moment to happen. I can only be, thankful for the Notre Dame community.
And the book that you and your wife are coming out with later this year is called Hope Amid Horror. Father Bob Dowd has declared this year the Notre Dame Forum is all going to be, for the next academic year, Cultivating Hope. So I hope we can invite you back to kind of share your story with your wife about how amid horror, you're still able to cultivate hope. But it's an incredible story. One final question for each of you. And there's a lot of people in this country and really the world over that are struggling with their consciences, where they see injustice, where they see things being wrong. There's always a fear, trepidation that if I stand up, if I make my voice heard, I may suffer dire consequences, not just for myself, but for my family, like the two of you have experienced acutely. What words of recommendation, and we'll start with you, Maria, would you give to somebody who is wrestling with their faith, sitting on the sidelines, not sure whether or not to act and how to act?
I think hope lives in the people who refuse to be silent. I think hope lives in the teenagers who still dream back home, and the journalists who still write, and the people who still stand up, even though we're being punished, and even though they're under surveillance. Mm-hmm. Hope lives within us, who there are 1,000 reasons why we shouldn't be here telling our story, yet we are here today. So certainly follow your heart. Follow your heart, stand true to yourself, and stay hopeful on the Lord.
That's beautiful. There's a lot there. Hope lies within those who refuse to be silenced. That's powerful. How about for you, Juan?
I'm glad that you mentioned fear, because fear is the best ally of tyrants, of autocrats. Yeah. They use fear to as a weapon. Generate fears generates inaction.
Yes.
And as Dr. Martin Luther King said, the indifferent, those staying on the sideline, those who are not engaged, are probably worse than those who are attacking those values. Right. So first you have to recognize the fear, and then as an action, try to find ways of overcoming that fear. So when you're able to get out of that comfort zone, that's what my wife did. Yeah. When she was found in a situation that her life was destroyed. She said, I didn't have an empty nest when my daughter went to school. It was a destroyed nest. Yeah. So when you walk out of that fear, then you start thinking creatively. Yeah. And motivated by hope and faith, you can start thinking, okay, what can I do to overcome that fear first? And then without the fear, being responsible, because this is a risky situation. My life was at risk, and probably took a couple of risky decisions in my life that put me in a level of risk. You have to be very careful about that too, because you're dealing with evil people. Right. But at the same time, you have to recognize the power of fear and how to overcome that in order to fight for what is good, for what is just, and democracy, freedom, political participation is extremely important. Yeah. I'm really disappointed in a way to see many young people not really interested in politics. I'm so glad that Maria is motivated and has the faith, but she might not be representing the average college graduates. And there's so many things, beautiful things that you can do through political action, activism, that you can change the world. So, I'm really glad that you raised this issue of fear, because that's what motivates inaction, and inaction sometimes can be even more harmful than aggression.
It's the greatest weapon of the dictator, right? Just to spread fear and create paralysis against the injustice. So listen, I just want to say to both of you, Notre Dame is so much better for your presence. It has been great that Notre Dame could serve as a refuge and support to you, but you have made this a better, ever more strong and true community, in the words of our alma mater. And so we are so grateful for your example, for the testament to faith and hope and love that you embody each and every day. And I know that prayer and faith is a cornerstone for both of you. And we always close this session with a prayer to our patroness, Our Lady, and the Hail Mary. And I thought it would be really appropriate today if maybe we were to share, and please pray along with us in English, but share the Ave Maria in Spanish. So if you two would lead us off.
Dios te salve María, llena eres de gracia, el Señor es contigo. Bendita tú eres entre todas las mujeres, y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega por nosotros los pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Amén.
Thank you both. God bless all of you. Take care and go Irish.